Hey, it's Kirk Harnack from MaxxKonnect, and I'm joined today by their Vice President for Wireless Operations, and that is Micah Dempsey. Micah, good to see you. Welcome in.
Thank you. Thank you, Kirk.
Micah, I'm looking for some technical explanations and how this helps operation. We hear about MaxxKonnect Wireless, and we hear through advertising or through podcasts, or we hear about the benefits of using MaxxKonnect Wireless, something about static IP addresses and prioritized data. I know what those words mean. I'm not sure really what the implications are or how they help us, or maybe even some trade secrets, how you guys do that. So you're going to reveal, if not everything, reveal some here as to how this technology works. Our audience is a bunch of engineers, so I think we can talk technical. Let's talk first about this idea of a prioritized connection, because we've all been there. We've all been in crowded situations where our phone and its data connection, normally we get great operation, but sometimes, hey, why is my picture or why is my video of the halftime at the football game taking so long to upload? Tell me about prioritized data versus consumer cellular data.
Yeah, there's always a lot of variables with any wireless connectivity, but specifically when you're dealing with cellular carriers, you get there before a game for a remote at the stadium, you set up, everything tests good, and then as soon as the stadium fills up, it starts hogging the bandwidth on whatever local tower it's connected to, and that's where the prioritized connection comes in. It keeps it steady and reliable, and it kind of cuts out the clutter of everyone else's phones and pinging that tower and trying to suck up the bandwidth. So that's the key part of it is to get that reliable connection so that you can do a reliable, steady audio stream or video stream over that network.
How is MaxxKonnect able to offer this prioritized service? What's special that MaxxKonnect does that I can't do for myself?
The biggest thing is the contracts we have with the carriers. And that took our owner over 2 years to get these deals with all the carriers. And it's one thing I've heard said before, too, is what's stopping anyone from doing this? It's like, well, nothing, just about 2.5 years of time and dealing with the carriers to get that prioritized status with the networks. So that's ultimately what it comes down to.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think that the most important place to be prioritized is in that RF link between the nearest tower and your device, whether it's your cell phone or whether it is one of the 4G or 5G gateway modems that MaxxKonnect offers. Am I correct in that it's that RF portion that gets prioritized?
Yes, that is where the most variation can happen, just with RF interference. And there's still a lot of variables involved with it, but that's the biggest part is your local connection to that local tower and not getting kicked down or throttled or anything like that.
So oftentimes we look at our device, typically a cell phone, but it could be one of these data gateways, and we look at the number of bars. Tell me what I should gather when I see, whatever your device has, 4 bars, 5 bars as the max. What should I understand from that reading, and what should I not assume from that reading?
So the LED indicators on devices, there's no real definition of what scale they're using to indicate those bars. And that's where, I've seen cases where you'll have full bars, but the signal quality is poor. You'll be having high latency, high ping. There's several different RF measurements for what your total connection is. And that's where you can get into these devices and actually kind of pinpoint very specific RF measurements to determine what might be an issue if you're having an issue with your connection.
One year we were at NAB. I was responsible for sending video from the SBE national meeting to I guess to YouTube. We were doing a live feed on YouTube, and I thought, well, my phone's got fantastic speed, and we tried that in a test. And the video didn't look so good. It kept dropping out. It kept freezing, even though the test looked wonderful and the graph that the test drew was fairly smooth. It wasn't going blah, blah, blah. It was fairly smooth, and it didn't work very well. Well, luckily, Josh Bone had already arranged for me to have a MaxxKonnect Wireless modem, and even though it's speed tested far lower, like 5 or 6 megabits per second up and down, we tried using that to upload to YouTube live video, and Lo and behold, it worked just perfectly. We were solid for an hour. What was I experiencing with this big difference where I was expecting my phone and its hotspot abilities to be much better, and it turned out that the MaxxKonnect Wireless turned out to be way better.
Yep. Well, that is the exact kind of scenario of that prioritized connection versus consumer, because the consumer cellular, it is the non-technical term for it is just bursty. You'll run that speed test and it'll be through the roof and you'll be, oh, great, this is good to go. But if you had a way to continuously look at what that speed is doing, it is going to be all over the place. And that's just the nature of how the cellular infrastructure feeds to these devices. And using that prioritized connection, that's kind of what we say when people ask about, the speed, or if they're worried about the speed. It may be low, but it will stay there and it will be steady and reliable, which is what you need when you're doing a constant stream like that. The difference is, and that's, I've gotten that a lot too, where people will run a speed test. Oh, well, my phone's running this. It's also on Verizon. I have a Verizon MaxxKonnect SIM and it's running this speed. But ultimately, with that connection, it's going to stay where it's at and give you that steady feed.
Okay, that makes sense and agrees with my experience. I had another experience. I was doing the TWiRT show from a hotel in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And I was doing it from the bar, which had a great view of the beach right behind me where I set up. And the hotel Wi-Fi was great until it wasn't. And I swear about every 3 or 4 minutes, it would just stop. And 30 seconds later, it would come back. The signal bars were always there on the Wi-Fi, but the data wasn't always there. So then I tried my cell phone, and that looked like it ought to work. And it's kind of the same problem as I had in Las Vegas. It had a good speed, but it wasn't consistent at all, at least in the throughput. Then I pulled out the MaxxKonnect Wireless, and even though it measured lower in speed, and I thought, is this going to be enough? We did the whole show, and it was no problem, and it worked perfectly. So once again, MaxxKonnect Wireless saved the day. Can you comment on, again, what I experienced there, and is this the kind of problem that MaxxKonnect Wireless is designed to overcome?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly what it's suited for, is for keeping that steady connection. One other thing I'll say on the speeds, though, is, where we are located and where most of these devices are programmed and tested, there's a multi-carrier cell tower right down the street, and the signal's through the roof. So whenever we run these speed tests, it'll be 60 down, 30 up, something like that, just on LTE. And that's one of those variables that it's going to depend on what the local cellular infrastructure is going to be, what their backhaul is going to be like. So that's where there's a lot of variables in what that speed can be, but the nature of its connection to that cellular network, that's what's going to keep it constant and keep it steady. So it may be a low speed, it may be a higher speed, but it's going to stay what it's at.
So I think we can say that MaxxKonnect Wireless, in nearly every scenario, provides for a steady and reliable data flow for a broadcast stream. And of course, it works great for looking at security cameras at a transmitter site, getting into your remote control at the transmitter site, providing VoIP at the transmitter site, or on remote, you may be near a stadium that has, 80,000 fans, and a lot of them are updating their Instagrams and Facebook pages and things like that. And you're doing your remote, and it's going to work. And I have personally witnessed this happening at the New Jersey Devil Rays. The MaxxKonnect just plugged right along, no problem. Let's talk about another feature that MaxxKonnect Wireless offers, and that is a public static IP. Now most of the carriers, unless you make terrific arrangements, and I have done this, and it's not very easy to do typically, because very few people at the carrier seem to know that this may be available, or it may not, depending on your plan, or how to do it if it is available. And I've gotten the runaround so many times from some big companies that are supposed to be offering this, and that's the public static IP. Most of the carriers are using what they call carrier NAT. So there's a public IP address out there, but it ain't yours. You're getting natted to a 10-dot address on the carrier's network. And for most people and many applications, this is fine. But if you need to externally jump into that device, carrier NAT is not going to provide you that direct access. So talk to me about the public static IP address and how you get that with MaxxKonnect.
Yeah, the public static IPs, those come with all of the essential plans, and they're very useful for that fixed location. Like if you have it at a transmitter site, you have equipment you need to get access to. It's very easy to configure a port forward. You can whitelist whatever local IPs to be able to access that. And you can very easily pull up your transmitter web UI, your remote control UI, any device that's connected that has a web interface, you'll be able to access. The other thing with the public static IPs is it kind of helps with that connection quality also. And this is something kind of more specific for cellular, just in the nature of how it connects with the network. For the public static IP to work, it'll have a custom APN, which is the access point name, and that is for that SIM to connect. And so that's another thing too. When we program these devices, we will pre-program all of that information into the device so it's ready to connect up right when you get it.
And a couple other nice things about having a static IP is that if your data is inbound to somewhere, you can whitelist because you know the IP address that it's coming from, not coming from any other IP address. You can whitelist that. And of course, you can also do a VPN. Now, VPNs can work over non-static IPs, but it sure is convenient to hard program that in, right?
Yeah. Also with the like audio codecs, using whatever brand audio codec to program in, and you put that specific IP, whatever port, and it's an easy way to set up those profiles to be able to make those audio connections for whoever's using that audio codec. They can just push a button once it's programmed, and you don't have to worry about that IP changing. You don't have to worry about reprogramming that profile. Once you set it, it's set.
We're talking to Micah Dempsey, and Micah, we know that there are the bar indications or LEDs on either your phone or on gateway devices that indicate something about signal strength. But there's a lot more to signal strength than just the number of bars. I mean, figures like RSSI and RSRP. I've heard of RSSI. These others I'm not so familiar with. Why don't you walk us through these different figures of merit?
Yeah, so the RSSI, that is the main one. That's the most common one. And that's kind of a range of -50 to like -90. And that is dBm measurements, but it's -50 being on the good side. That's a very strong connection, -90 being almost unusable. And that's where something, I've seen cases where you would have 4 or 5 bars on your device indicating like, oh, I have great signal strength. You log into it, look at that RSSI measurement, and it would be around like -54, -60, which to me, that's a great signal. You should have a good connection. And that's where, if you're having issues, you start looking at these other RF measurements, specifically like the SINR and the RSRQ. The Q in the RSRQ stands for quality. It's essentially what's the quality of this connection. So that's another indicator to look for, because if it's poor quality but great signal strength, it's like, okay, you're close to a tower, but it could be interference. It could be all sorts of things that are causing poor quality on that connection, which kind of leads into the signal to noise ratio, which that's the SINR. So, you're inside of a metal building, but you're at the tower site. If you're co-located with a cellular carrier on your tower, you should have great signal strength, but you put it inside that transmitter building and it's blocking a lot of that RF, and you're having a lot of noise essentially on that RF frequency. And so that can come into play also, where it'll degrade the quality of the connection. You can look at those measurements and kind of determine, do I need outside antennas, directionals, omni mounted outside of the building? Do I need to move the router from this location to another? And the same goes for a remote.
On the MaxxKonnect Wireless gateway routers, is there more data available that users can look at?
Yeah, so the hardware that we use, there's really nothing special about it other than it's stuff that we've sourced, we've found and tested, and we know it works well with our service. They're considered like IoT devices, so this is what kind of differentiates them from consumer grade hardware. So something that you might get direct from a carrier could be, like a hotspot device or a phone or a tablet. Those classify as consumer devices, versus these hardware devices are fully functional routers with the embedded LTE modems or 5G modems. They have a lot of options inside of them. Each manufacturer is slightly different, but for the most part, they all give you these indicators and give you tools in their interfaces to kind of assess these things and check these measurements.
One of the things that I noticed and was very pleased about is that if I need some particular configuration or configuration change in my MaxxKonnect gateway router, I may not have to do that myself. I recently ordered one from you guys to ship out to our stations in Hawaii, and I needed it preset. And I could have done it myself, but why, when I may have messed it up? I needed it to arrive out there all correct, and I needed the LAN address to be what I wanted for the transmitter side, and I needed a particular port forward to be instantiated in the router. And again, maybe I could have done this myself. I've done it on other routers, but somehow you guys made it happen. Tell me about your service of either in your office before you ship it, or maybe even remotely configuring MaxxKonnect wireless equipment.
Yes, we do customize certain things, so it's not like the device default settings. We can customize the programming of these routers, but it makes it a breeze when you're installing, especially if you're at a transmitter site, to have that pre-programmed and just ready to literally plug and play. And that is something we can also do remotely. Once the device is connected online, our support team, we can get into that device remotely and custom setup and work with you too while you're on site. So that makes it easy too, where you can get there to install it and realize, oh, I actually need, this port forward set up, or I need the LAN gateway changed to this IP. And that's where you can call us, and we can be working on that while you're working on other things at this transmitter site. We deal with these on a regular basis, so we can pretty quickly get into there and get whatever setting you might need. And that's something that's included with the activation when you get a device from us. It's also included with the support if you need any changes made at any time.
Let's talk for a moment about getting good cellular signal into the MaxxKonnect wireless device. Some transmitter sites are pretty challenging. They may be miles from the nearest known tower. They may be in a metal shipping container, a really nice Faraday cage. What are some of the options available for an external antenna, if that is determined to be necessary, to get a good cellular signal into the MaxxKonnect device?
The devices typically come with what we call them just stock antennas, and it's similar to like a Wi-Fi antenna, where it's basically just a little stick, and those are SMA connectors on the devices, and that's a pretty standard format. So there's a variety of different external antennas you can get, and you can kind of source those from anywhere. There's a few that we keep in stock that we've found these, we've tested them, we've put them through their trials and tribulations, so we know that these are good quality antennas to use. There's a directional, and that's something we can help with support to, okay, look at the location, what's the closest tower, which direction does that directional need to be pointed. Those are pole mounted. I've seen all sorts of variations of how people have mounted those and got them on site. There's also variations of just omnidirectional antennas that are just to get outside of a building. If your router's mounted on a back wall or something, and you can just stick that cable through.
If I tell you where my transmitter site is, or if I tell you where the county high school is that I need to do ball games from,
right?
What can you determine beforehand about the signal strength that I might expect, and if I need to do anything special?
Yeah, so we have access to a couple of different resources that we can check whatever carrier you're on and determine where those towers are, what the coverage maps look like, in one part to determine what the best carrier might be, because that's also another thing that gets brought up a lot is what's the best carrier.
Okay, last question, and that's about support. Normally, one of the things that I really don't look forward to in my life is calling support at any of the big carriers, because I know it's going to be a struggle. There's going to be a script involved. There's going to be an interactive voice response involved. There's likely to be a person who, English is not their first language. MaxxKonnect's a little bit different. In fact, it's pretty likely that if I need some support from a MaxxKonnect Wireless, I'm going to get somebody with an Alabama accent. Is that right?
Yes, it'll most likely be me. I mostly run the support. We do have a few other people that will help with that. And that is a big thing in dealing with carriers, because we do have our own partner channels with the carriers to be able to get a higher tier support. So when there is an issue with the carrier, we can get a faster answer and not have to sit on a 1-800 number for an hour to get that answer. But having us as that first layer of support, I think, is a big deal because one, we know what you're trying to do. So we are all broadcasters here, so we're broadcast engineers. So when you call us with an issue of your tie line's not connecting or you can't get to your Burke, we know we're familiar with that equipment and we can help you get into that, figure out what's going on. The support is a big deal that comes with this service.
Micah Dempsey, VP of Wireless at MaxxKonnect. Micah, thanks for spending this time and informing us, and now we're all better educated. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for having me.